Hello everyone, we're back for another installment of Dan's Vinyl Corner, and today, just taking a step back from the summaries of records collected, vinyl tag, to talk about a couple albums that I've been listening to recently, as well as a GRAIL in the mail at the end. So we'll start with these in no particular order that have risen to the top of my mind as being in the heavy rotation. Firstly, we have the Velvet Underground's Loaded. This is a 1977 specialty press on the pink Cotillion label. I've had this copy for a little now, and really a big fan of this one. For a few years, I've had Velvet Underground and Nico, White Light, White Heat, more recently the self-titled, and it's sort of written off Loaded as being Velvet Underground's attempt at trying to create a mainstream rock album. But upon listening to it on a long drive to visit family, I realized that actually there were quite a number of good songs which combined a few of the good things about the nasal quality in Lou Reed's voice. It reminds of Bob Dylan, along with the 70s rock guitar that you might hear on something like a Sticky Fingers from the Rolling Stones. In particular, there are a few tracks that really pop out at me from this one. Rock and Roll, as being just this very romantic ballad of somebody who lives a boring life and hears rock and roll for the first time. You have Train Coming Round the Bend, Head Held High, which is a great start to the B-side. And then the B-side is, no pun intended, Loaded. You also have Sweet Nothing, which is probably my favorite song on the album, and it's just so captivating. Could listen to this one over and over again, and that's what it's looking like I'm doing. Another one, this is more of a recent pickup, is the Art Pepper Plus 11 Contemporary Records issue. This was part of the Acoustic and Craft, a joint project to start a new series on contemporary records, and I believe this is the first full-fledged release in the series to come out. This one is Art Pepper and a band doing 11 jazz standards, and it's very interesting to me to hear these mastered by Bernie Grumman, who, of course, as they have pretty heavily marketed, was the audio engineer, mastering engineer at Contemporary Records a little time later in the 70s. So certainly a suitable person to be mastering this series. This is one that I did as a blind buy, simply to give the series a chance, and also because, I had heard it was very good sounding and somewhat heavily allocated. So whereas I have not really been buying as many of the classic series or Tone Poets lately, this one I thought I would give a chance. I would say in terms of the sound quality, it's one of those great sounding reissues. It's so dynamic and clear, and it has that big sound of a Bernie Grumman issue. That what else is interesting about this album is the maturity that Art Pepper develops as a saxophonist in terms of his ability, as they put it, a blindfold test to play saxophone in maybe a more direct East Coast style, but also to play the cool jazz, the West Coast style, and really flaunts that here in a larger group setting. And that larger group setting where you have a small band and then a kind of larger band, so there are opportunities for some unisons, creates not only the typical call and response, but also an opportunity for these huge moments of dynamics in the music, which are almost reminiscent of classical music. And from this you can understand why it's said that the contemporary records were used as audiophile records before there was a mo-fi or a specialty industry around that. Just given the extreme highs and lows and the rich sounds that come out of your system. And is absolutely great on the last few tracks especially. There's Groovin' High, Opus de Funk, which is good. There's another Dizzy Gillespie on this. I struggle to recall. Anthropology, that's what it was. And that's the last track, Donna Lee, the Charlie Parker version, where they go crazy with the dynamics, and it's an absolutely beautiful and sparkling version. This is my first time hearing this album, so by no means a rigorous comparison to any other version, be it vinyl or not, but certainly a great way to explore this part of jazz, this West Coast phenomenon, contemporary label that has largely been absent from my collection thus far. Another one I've been listening to is Willie Nelson, Shotgun Willie. We have a early Atlantic press here. I think this one is a Monarch. Yeah, this one's a Monarch. And what you've got here is on side one, you've got basically Willie Nelson doing some just of his own storytelling, country type songs. So, for instance, you'll have a song about sad songs and waltzes not selling, which is a sad song that is a waltz. And then on side two, you have some great takes on Bob Wills tracks, such as Bubbles in My Beer. He also does You Look Like the Devil in the Morning, which is absolutely striking song. Really, this is Willie Nelson as a balladeer, but also going deeper into the genre and doing the honky tonk, doing the country jazz style, I guess you might call it, that Bob Wills did, or emulating those songs at least. And a very nice sounding early Monarch press. This album has all that analog hotness, all that tape richness on it. Been enjoying that one. Another one, which some of you may know, I have the first album, which is an OG US. This is the second album, which I'm not expecting to find at any point on an OG. This is Mighty Baby, Jug of Love. This one is incorporating some North African sonorities into the music. They're crediting somebody, I think, as playing a baby's rattle, even on here. Yeah, we have, in addition to the band, we have guest musician Zahara, who plays the flute, and Abdul Kabir, who plays the baby's rattle. So this, they're taking on, outside of the usual, some, mandolin, some congas, and those Eastern touches to the music, almost a Yusef Lateef type exploration there. You can tell that it has the original sound of Mighty Baby, and it definitely is Mighty Baby. Just a very sour prog sound that they have. But you can tell there are also kind of these runs of guitar, moments of clarity in the music, and I would not be surprised they had definitely heard the Grateful Dead on this point. Such as Keep On Juggin', the last track on the first side, is very hypnotic, and it reminds of a Dead jam. I really like the first track, Jug of Love. The first two tracks are kind of melancholy on this one. Probably Tasting the Life on side 2. Virgin Spring or Tasting the Life on side 2 is a high point of the album. This is Trading, what is it called? I believe it's called Trading Places. Yeah, that's what it's called. This one is on a reissue label called Trading Places. I do think they licensed the music, but I'm not sure if it's like a full-fledged label. I couldn't find much about it. The pressing was pretty trashed out of the sleeve when I originally got it, but it plays fine, it plays clear, and it just needs to be cranked. But it's absolutely an awesome album. Everything said and done, and I'm glad to own it in any form. And I'm sure the whole neighborhood here will continue listening to it. Now rounding it out, next is one that I showed in my jazz finds of the year so far, is the John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman, this 1968 ABC press. That one is absolutely fabulous, and it, I think, solidifies Coltrane's versatility as a balladeer. As they say, Johnny Hartman maybe is somebody that people hadn't listened to as much at the time it came out, and later in his career recorded on more minor labels. This album, I think, was the largest album that he did, probably. As far as I understand, Coltrane wanted to do the album, but Johnny Hartman felt it was not an appropriate pairing, or he was not of the caliber of jazz. Maybe he was doing lounge or something else to do the album, but Coltrane really wanted that sound, and they got together and did it. And I would say the bookends to this album are really what tie the bow for me, really what sealed the deal with this as being a great vocal jazz album on the same tier as an Ella Fitzgerald or a Sarah Vaughan album. For instance, I think this is the only male jazz vocal that I have. Maybe I'll have to come back on that, but you know, they say it's wonderful. And Autumn Serenade, just the emotion that is conveyed, these stories, the lush life on side 2, the way that they sing about that he sings, and there is such melancholy which comes across with such warmth in his voice. Something about the contrast of that and about the minimalism of Coltrane's approach. This is Coltrane doing a Miles Davis, using the vocal as a foil. And so there's another side to this record of Coltrane developing that minimalism, developing that skill as a balladeer, which he chooses to bring out only when it suits him, but is always kind of there in his back pocket, is just phenomenal. There's also kind of an audiophile side of this one, in that, as many of you may know, or may have seen or have, there is the acoustic sounds press of this that's out now as well. And I basically picked up the acoustic sounds press and then found this. So this facilitates a little bit of a comparison here, and what you're really getting with the impulse is the conventional wisdom. It's a Van Gelder. It has the hotness, right? It has the warmth, maybe some resonance and mic leakage, whatever was initially on the tape, and was mastered on, I guess it would have been a tube system at the time in the late 60s. It's all there. And this one is going to be mastered on a more modern system, so it'll have a more analytical sound. But you don't get the concerns that you would with the first one, in that there's very clear instrument separation. It's very detailed sound. You may argue with some of the acoustic sounds releases almost to the point of being unnatural. But I think this one of the acoustic sounds releases, along with Black Saint and the Sinner Lady and Crescent, are really some of the releases where they mastered it with more of that warmth, more of that hotness. I think it was really a matter of a mastering choice rather than the tape condition. The other ones, I find it sounds like a version of the original pressing being played in a concert hall, as opposed to a true reproduction of the original pressing. But with this one, it's probably like 80 to 85% of the hotness that you get on the original pressing. But the original pressing, the sound just pleasantly fills the room. And so if you have a lot of tubes in your system, to the point where you can make anything sound like that, go to this one. But if you're like me, you have a system which is solid state and is very neutral, then go with an early press, and I would say just hear it this way instead of a repackaging. But this is certainly no slouch. Definitely glad to have both of them on the days when, I prefer not to have a noisy record. I would say this one is probably a middle-of-the-road VG Plus on the ABC, but it has a few clicks here and there. So if I want to hear it completely silent, no soft ticks, you can pull out, the acoustic sounds. So it works for me. And then the last one here is a GRAIL in the mail. For a little while, I had been searching and really doing a big Impulse kick this year, searching all around to find Impulse albums and also Prestige, really trying to diversify from Blue Note and get that first-hand experience with the broader range of jazz and develop, my own opinion. I think now that it's all too common with the reissues coming out that, folks can get into having a lot of the very same records, and that's good to an extent. I am keeping up to date with the reissues to an extent, but there are also some things that are underrated or which slip under the radar there for one reason or another. Not sure if it comes down to preference of one person at a label, like apparently Chad Kassam from Acoustic Sounds only likes to make, or do albums that he likes, or if at a bigger place like UME, it comes down to them, researching the market and figuring out, this is what we think people will buy versus not. So this all a long-winded way of saying that I was trying to round out the list of albums from the Impulse catalog that I had listened to and felt would be needed to consummate that part of my collection. And in line with the pressing comparison that I presented, I feel that The OG pressings are almost always superior for the Impulse, being those Van Gelder. They were all recorded in stereo. And one that I was really looking for months and drove all over, could never find it, was Coltrane. This is a stereo 1964 ABC press on the original Impulse label, and oh boy, does it have that vivid 3D jazz sound, and is this an underrated one? I mean, I think this was done as maybe an AP 45 or something, but it's not on the radar of a lot of jazz listeners the same way that Love Supreme is, or that a 1960s Miles Davis album is, but I really think it does belong there. For me, this one reminds me a lot of John Gilmore's playing. It has a very similar kind of pensive or existential sound to the Today and Tomorrow album. The start of this, Out of This World in particular, reminds me very much of the piano player McCoy Tyner start of Today and Tomorrow with Contemporary Focus, in that the rhythm is similar, the block chords on the piano are similar, and I feel that John Coltrane, apparently John Gilmore was one of the few musicians that really made an impact on him, and I feel that on this particular record, Coltrane is really channeling Gilmore and taking in some of those lessons or some of those introspections about how to play with the restraint but still be free and still be angular, as the cliche goes. You get tracks, side 2, Inchworm, which has a rhythm that's like an inchworm. You get Tunji and Miles Mode, and if McCoy Tyner, I mean, you could just put McCoy Tyner on the front of this thing and call it Tyner. Those two tracks, it's really, McCoy Tyner's burning on it just as much as Coltrane, and he's really embracing that full, post-bop sound. This is free, but it's not an attack. It's not palatable, and it's pretty close. It's pretty close to Love Supreme in terms of how good of an album this is. I think really we could go on and say a lot more about this one, but it really comes down to what was written here by Bob Thiel. After repeated listening, I felt that any comments here would be unnecessary. After all, John Coltrane and his men have something to say musically, and the true jazz lovers will understand the music without detailed explanation. There is no need for album notes on the merits of Trane's music. There will be plenty of accolades given in newspapers and magazines about the virtues of this album. Now, of course, Bob Thiel, being the producer, being one of the executives of Impulse Records, I think was a bit of a biased party, but it didn't prevent him from making a true statement in that case. Definitely check out Coltrane. Whether it's a Wax Time or whether it's an OG or an AP 45, this is music that's worth having in your collection, and that's my Grail in the mail. I had to, cheat on this one because I just couldn't find it in the wild, and it was really missing. So glad to have that one, and I've listened to it a number of times since it arrived, cleaned it up with the VPI here, and looking forward to more listening and sort of sharing the rotation, sharing the continued new finds as we venture into this new new time here.